most of you were here and in on it, so appreciate your attention. Going over our agenda for Monday night, Ms. Johnson, you have the invitation, and pledge to the flag, Ms. Jones, good with that? And we'll go through the roll call, approval of the minutes. Minutes have been distributed, they're in your packet. Did anybody see anything that needed to be corrected on the minutes before Monday night's meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We'll have a period of announcements. I have a few to get into, but I'll do those at that meeting. Amendments to the agenda. Do we have any last minute amendments that anyone knows of? Okay. Citizens' response to the agenda items. We'll ask them to sign in. County Mayor's report would be next. Mayor, do you want to go into anything tonight?
We're already way behind in the, so I'll just give you the 30,000 foot view. We're going to talk about the landfill. We're still working on it. Talk about the streetscape. They started. Talk about our downtown's application. We're in the process of working on it. Park master plan, Parks and Recreation Committee tentatively got something set for the 13th to look over the draft proposal. So we're looking back and forth on that. Wheels and Sales Tax Town Hall, we got one set February 6th at 6:30. Then we're going to do two more, one at March 5th, one April 2nd, both of those at 6:30 here upstairs in the courtroom. The election commissioner says if you tag it to a specific election, so if you want to tag it to the election of August this year, you have to have the resolution submitted to the election commission by June 7th. And the fire chief was advertised in the newspaper this week. It'll be advertised, last week. It'll be advertised again this week. And then the end date, the deadline to take applications is noon on the 31st. So I've already got several, so. Is there any questions on my very in-depth report? Thank you.
Next, we'll have the Board of Education report with Dr. Sutfield. He did present that to the Budget and Finance Committee, and we will make that available to you in that night. They're basically just a summary of their financial standings versus where they were this time last year versus this year, and right now everything was right on line with pretty much their budget, and there was no large anomalies or discrepancies to notice. Some things were coming in above and some things were a little bit below, but in the final end of monies of their revenues, they were $20,000 more for the same period versus last year at the same time. So that was his report, and he will go over it again with us Monday night. Committee reports. We had many committees that met. I do need to make sure that you get your minutes in. I know that there was at least 9 that have met and have not turned in the minutes yet. We really need to get those in. Secretaries, chairman, please make sure your secretaries have the information they need. If they have questions, to finish those and get those turned in. I think we can just do those reports Monday night. I don't see any need going into them tonight. Several items of active business for Monday night. We have some appointments. Agricultural Board. These are all 3 of these are reappointments for a 2-year term. They've all been there before. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Housing Authority Board. Betty Payne will be assuming a vacated term there. On the Housing Authority Board, there's 5 members, and one of the members has to be a resident of the Housing Authority, and Ms. Payne is assuming that position. Planning Commission, there is a one vacancy. Have you?
I've still got a couple of candidates to talk to, but I will have a name by Monday.
Okay. Moving into resolutions, we have a support resolution for the Tennessee Downtown Downtowns program. First one in your resolution packet. That would be 20-20-01-676. Mayor, would you like to explain this?
Yes, sir. Right now, we're working with a Tennessee Downtown Steering Committee to submit an application to the Tennessee Department of Economic Community Development. This is a rural downtown revitalization program they've gotten. When I've talked to them in the past about what do we need to do for downtown revitalization, they all know, they say you need to apply for this program. It is a competitive program, so not everybody that applies gets picked. But one of the requirements is a support resolution from the local governing body. If we were a municipality, it would come from the city, but since we're metropolitan, it would come from this body. It's a 2-year program, so it only opens up every 2 years. The first year is the steering committee goes through training for best practices of how to revive rural downtowns, and the second year is more them putting into practice some of the things they learned. There is a $15,000 kind of demonstration project that is reimbursable by ECD, and so we would ask if this commission could pass this resolution in support of the application, if it is a requirement. And if we do, or if the steering committee does complete the program, it will make us eligible for other grants that could be used in the downtown area, such as a facade grant, which people can access to improve the outsides of their buildings.
Any questions? Next is Resolution 2020-02677, vehicle transfer from highway to solid waste. This is where the road department will be, or highway department will be giving a dump truck over to the solid waste department. There's no transfer of money, they're just transferring the title of which department owns this truck. So that's Resolution 2020-02. Any questions about that? Next resolution is 2020-03-678. This is the rules and regulations of the County Commission of Charleston County. We have a very lengthy set here. Put these together. Basically, they are what we're doing now, just put down the paper. I asked you to look these over, and if you had any questions, that we'd look at them tonight. I did have the county attorney, myself, Ms. Thomas, Reed Crowder, and the mayor look at these because I felt like they were the ones that worked with the county commission and the minutes and things of that nature and the rules and know as much about it as anybody. We had a few small edits that we made to it. All of those were pretty much in agreement on it. Counselor did recommend that it go to a committee, and I thought that was a committee, so I feel like we did that in spirit anyway. Is there anybody that has any questions about any of these? And if it's not something that you're comfortable with doing this month, we can look at it further and put it off. But the ones that I've talked to, and I've talked to several of you about it, so please look at it and see if you had any problems with it or questions about it, and let me know. No one has. So, do we have any questions on it tonight?
I have issues with number 17.
Okay. And they are?
Just because, like, it's been like it has this month where we've had meeting after meeting after meeting, and if you're like I am, the secretary on multiple committees, 5 working days working 50 and 60 hours a week that's difficult to get done.
Then what time would you think would be more appropriate?
I mean, I don't know, I just know 5 working days is hard for me working a full-time job and everything else.
Well, 5 working days would also encompass a weekend typically. If you had a Tuesday night meeting, they wouldn't be due back in until the next Monday.
So then it doesn't need to say working days.
Well, working days means No, that would be calendar days. That would be
Right.
7 calendar days. Working days is always, at least in my experience, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Monday through Friday. It is important, like we've talked about many times before, the secretary position is probably one of the more important things, and the minutes being done properly and quickly is as important as having the meeting itself. Because in so many ways, the meeting never happened until those minutes have been reported. Did, but you know what I'm saying as far as perpetuity, looking at it. So, I mean, if you think this needs to be longer than that, the problem that you get into is typically you think you could get them done in that amount of time. Nobody's gonna kick you off the commission if you don't. It's just basically the guideline as to how, if you ask, well, how quick am I supposed to do these minutes? 5 working days. I know sometimes that could be a hindrance, and in those special circumstances, nobody's gonna beat you up on it. Anything else?
Make it 7 working days.
Good.
That'd help a little.
I would say calendar.
Would that,
Calendar would be better if you did 7 calendar instead of,
so you're gonna say you can change 5 working days to 7 calendar days? I mean, it means, to me, it means the same thing, but if it's clearer, clearer that way, then I'm fine with that.
There's a lot to comprehend in this. You gotta go back and read it, I mean, it's just so much, that's probably something that I've missed in there, and I think we need to put this off and look at it, or, I mean, it's just,
I think there's
it's like number 52, agendas need to be made available to Curtin National Association minimum 3 days. It's like me, I work every day in Gallatin, I'm the chairman of some of these, it's just hard for me to get in there and get these agendas done, and I'm, when I'm so busy that I can't stay on my phone, I'm delivering mail, and
I understand, but I will tell you that there is a bill before the legislature to require any committee of the county commission to have an agenda published no later than 2 days prior to the meeting.
I think we try to do that.
I mean, I'm just saying, that may even become law. I don't know. I don't know whether it'll go anywhere or not, but it has it not? Was it 2 days?
Yeah, it was, if the county has a county website, you're required to post it on your website 48 hours before the meeting. And I think there may also be a requirement in there about how long after a meeting that minutes have to be posted, and I think it may be 7 days. But I don't quote me on that. I know the 48 hours, but the bill was originally submitted and then went to committee and it was amended at committee, but it has been carried by William Lambert, who is the Republican leader in the House, and Senator Hale, who is the Speaker pro tem, so I think they have a very good shot at getting passed.
So that was one reason we went to the 3 days, was to have a day to be able to get it posted to the website should that pass. That was the reason. Mr. Governor.
Mayor, in terms of the 7 days, you thought maybe that minutes had to be posted on the website, if you have county website. Is that what I heard?
I think that's what it said. Don't quote me on that. Like I said, they amended it. How I knew about it is I was doing the COE classes. I was driving, my wife was driving somewhere, so I'm sitting in the passenger seat watching my little phone and getting my hours in, and they mentioned this because it was a, it was on public meetings, Public Records Act. And so they were going over things, actually, it was, excuse me, it was a legislative update that was being presented to attorneys at the Bar Association, and they were going over it. One of the things they talked about was this bill pending in the state legislature. Now, TCSA and some local officials kind of got it put off to this new legislative session. However, it still seems like it had a pretty good shot of being passed. And there was the requirement that I know for certain is the agenda has to be posted 48 hours before the meeting. I think there's a requirement that the minutes be posted 7 days after the meeting, and they have to be maintained on the website for 12 months.
I guess my question going further is, minutes have to be posted within 7 days, and we have, the committee or that commission has not, approved those minutes, how is that?
Well, you can just post the draft of them, just so people, it's trying to be more as transparent as possible.
Like
Now, that's your argument, or some of the same arguments that county officials were making against the bill, so I don't know if it's gonna pass in its current form, but I do feel that something's gonna pass.
I do appreciate, you know, if there's something in the language that we can change to make it clearer, absolutely want to do it. And if we think there's too many problems with this to do it this month, we'll put it off. It's just, you know, if everybody, you know, and we can amend it, it's gonna be a resolution, it's not an ordinance, so it just takes one reading to change it. You know, a motion to change the wording in item number 27 from 5 days to 7 days at any commission meeting. So it's not like this is the tablets coming down from Mount Sinai. I mean, it can be changed. Mr. Clary, you're with me.
I think Mr. Mayor just noted that it's supposed to be on the county website for 12 months.
Yes, sir, it has to be maintained, so
This-
it'll be everything 12 months prior.
This says 24 months.
Well, you can go beyond it, you just can't go below it if that's what the state requires you to do.
It says a minimum.
Well, that's because that's a bill in the county, and this is a bill at the state legislature.
Well, don't state overrule the county.
If you were saying we're gonna post it for 6 months, and then they pass a bill saying you're gonna have it for 12 months, yes, it's gonna overrule you. But if you say we're gonna do it for 24 months, and you're gonna go beyond what they're requiring, they're not gonna say anything to you, you're
You did
allowed to do
everything.
that.
You
If
did.
you wanna go above and beyond what they're requiring of you, you're more than welcome to do it.
Mr. Ford.
Why don't we think about looking at it this way? Since we don't know what the state's gonna do, why don't we put off another month and see what they do?
Because you probably won't know on that for at least 4 months.
I will say, for our minutes, the way we've currently got the website set up, it goes back till 2014, 15. So, and we've got it well beyond that, and it's no real problem to post it. You just go on there and say, we're gonna post this document, and it posts on the website. It's not that big an issue.
What I was thinking though is maybe the wording should be matched instead of.
We can change it. If that passes, we can change the word.
Well, if it passes, it don't matter what that says, because state law is gonna overrule it. But like I said, that's why I'm saying, if you were saying 6 months, and they said 12 months, well, then you're gonna have to do 12 months. But if you pass 24 months and the state said 12 months, well, then you went above and beyond, and there's no issue. If you're just wanting to do what the state requires, then you just go with what. If you put, let's say, if you were to pass 24 next week, and you do it by resolution, you say 24 months, and then 3 months down the road, the state legislature passes a bill that says 12 months, you can come back and just do a resolution, say we're gonna change that to 12 months. Or if you wanna go ahead and do it 12 months. I don't know what the final version of that bill is gonna be. Like I said, right now, I think the requirement is 12 months right now to maintain it on the website. Again, me personally, I like having it back to 2014, 15, because I've got county commissioners going, we did this back in, well, I gotta go back and look it up. And the people in the county are asking me the same thing. Now they can go right on the website and find it. I'd like to have it all the way back till we went in 2001 when we went metro. But that's a bit much.
Well, like I say, this is a starting point. It can be amended at any time, and I'm sure it will be. There's no doubt in my mind that we're gonna change some of this. We're gonna add things to it. But this is basically a start of where we're at, taken from what 6 or 7 other jurisdictions have on the books. And it's just a compilation. And Mr. Buckmaster.
Well, like I say, I've argued the point about having agendas for the committee meetings posted for the public for years. I believe that's a good thing, so the public knows what you're talking about. But for the minutes, I had the same concerns. Amy and I talked about them. If I could suggest possibly those minutes pass through the chairman of the committee to the, whoever's gonna put them on the website. And I know that for a while, they were being put on there as unapproved minutes. But just as maybe a second way of catching anything, maybe the chairman look them over and present them to the mayor's office. Maybe that might help ease some folks.
Typically, when I was secretary, I would write the minutes and send them to the chairman for them to look at before I ever distributed them to anybody else, to make sure they were Right, I guess I just assumed that everybody did that, but evidently they don't. Mr. Brooks.
I'd like to have a discussion for just a moment about the minutes and approvals. I'd like for the people who are taking the minutes, the secretaries, to, as they do naturally, they turn that over to the mayor's office. But as the report is actually written from the mayor's office as to what the minutes actually are, I'd like to see the minutes that are written as the summary come back to the secretary to approve. Because sometimes things get lost in the translation. From what I have been gathering the last couple of months, is sometimes the minutes are written and then it's just presented to the full court. There might be a phrase or something's going on that all of a sudden that's not what really happened in that meeting. And so I think whoever that secretary is needs to have the ability to not only send the minutes forward, but have the recap come back to them, so that, because they're the first ones that's approving, because they're the ones that write it to start with.
Well, I think that's why it needs to go to the chairman.
But the chairman didn't write it.
No, to look at. After
Right,
the
right.
secretary's
Then the secretary
written,
to be included in it. I think
send
you're
them to
right.
the chairman.
I think
Let
that's
the chairman
correct.
approve them before they're
So
sent
kind of
on.
adding to that to say, you know, the secretary, the person who wrote that needs to see what that final document's supposed to be. In addition.
Mr. Butler.
I do also want y'all to consider that not all of our meetings are monthly. Some of them are quarterly, so if you wanna wait until the minutes are approved, the public doesn't see what you did for 3, 4, 5 months. And that's not where the transparency comes from, in my opinion.
I would just like to know whether to move forward with this month, and
I'd like to, if we could wait a month for us, just kind of to look at them
Huh?
real good. I mean, just for some that haven't read all the way through or quite understand maybe the gist of it. Not saying changing, but just,
is that a motion?
that's
We
a
can't have a motion.
Well, we really can't have a motion.
okay.
You be prepared to make that motion Monday night, to postpone the vote on this until next month. Okay? And be prepared to do it, because there may be somebody jumps in there and makes a motion to approve it. But one way or the other, we can
Either way.
deal with it. I don't wanna rush it, nobody's trying to rush it. Ask for input on it, it's a starting point, we had to have a starting point.
Right.
And that's all this is. And if you have things that, you know, you have a really serious question about, please ask. Okay? Move on. Anybody else on that? That good? Get into ordinances. We have a public hearing and a second reading to establish the Charter Revision Commission. Anybody have any questions about that? That's ordinance 185 to 1915. It lays out what their job is and who will be on that commission. They will serve until the mayor decides they're no longer needed in that capacity. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, sir. Charter, this is just meet requirements of the charter, so 10 people for each of the districts, and then nominated by the mayor, affirmed by the county commission, and after that, they serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And this was passed on first reading in November, so this is
This will
just
be a second
second
reading.
reading.
We will open the meeting, yeah. Right? We'll
Yes,
open it for a public hearing first and then the second reading. Next is ordinance 186/2020-01. Much like the, kind of the rules and duties and responsibilities or rules and procedures that we had for the, commission, this is duties and responsibilities of the Water Utility Board. There again, some of this was laid out, in their incorporation, and some of. Next is ordinance 187/2020-02, and this is an ordinance to provide the establishment, control, and regulation of address numbering display in Hartsville, Travis County. This was recommended by the Code and Zoning Enforcement Committee on January 2nd, recommended by the Emergency Communications 911 District Board, January 14th, and recommended by the Emergency Services Committee on January 14th. This will take 2 readings and a public hearing. This will be for the first reading on this ordinance. Anyone have any questions on it?
I just encourage everybody to read it. Please read it, because it's very confusing to me. Well, you've got to, if your mailbox is on the opposite side of the road, you've got to have, you've got to mark it on your driveway, and if you share a driveway, then you've got to mark each driveway.
Well, it's one of those things that's hard to phrase, I think, every situation that you might be in. But the idea is for people to mark the entrance to their home with their address number that's visible from both directions on the street. It can be on the mailbox if the mailbox is at the driveway. If it's not, then it needs to be on a post at the driveway entrance. How you phrase that, any better than this, I'm not. We hash that around in committee. If somebody wants to suggest an amendment to the wording that you think would read better or be less confusing, I'm sure we can hear it, but it's been beat to death. Ordinance 188/2003. This is a rezoning, A1 to R1. R1 property, all the property to the north and to the rear is R1 property. So it's just an extension basically of that R1 zone. And it was recommended by the Planning Commission on its January 13th meeting. Any questions about it? Next is ordinance 189/2004. The heading in the package said partial 0705, tax map 017. That is incorrect. That was the one previous. It reads correctly down in the wording of the resolution, but we have changed that heading to say partial 010.01 and 010.030 of map 25A in group A. But it is changing it from commercial to R1. This is Mockingbird Lane, the new subdivision to the west side of First Baptist Church. And they had reserved, at the Planning Commission's suggestion, the first 2 lots commercial in case they wanted to develop it to commercial, with the assurance that if they wanted to develop it into residential, it shouldn't be an issue. And the Planning Commission did recommend making this change so that all that property is R1. There is quite a bit of R1 property there again. If you look at to the west side and across the street, there's a lot of pretty much all of that's residential property around it. So it's not a weird request in any way, but they just want to go ahead and develop it residential instead of commercial. Any questions about that one? Next, we get into budget amendments. We have 2 fund balance transfers. The first one was 2020-101-08 FB, and that was where we need to take some money out of fund balance and put into dues and memberships, because the membership into GNRC, Greater National Regional Council, was $353 more than we had put in the budget. They increased their dues. We weren't aware of that. And that one was approved by the Budget and Finance Committee. Next one is VA 118 EMS vehicle, $38,000. This budget amendment was recommended by Emergency Service Committee. It was not approved by Budget and Finance Committee and was actually they wanted to postpone it and refer it back to, Emergency Services Committee. I had stated in that meeting that I would go ahead and put it before the full body, but I think that's, since we have a conflict between the two committees, I think it would be best if we just go ahead and send it back to Emergency Services Committee and or the steering committee to see which committee they want to take it up. And, so therefore, I think it would be advisable for us not to take up this budget amendment next Monday night. So therefore, I'm gonna ask to pull it from the agenda. With no, if I have objections. With any objections from removing it from the agenda this month?
Hi, Jerry.
Want to put it to a vote? I don't know what to do.
I just want to make one point on it, I think I did earlier. If you try to make this to the Emergency Services Committee, your money's gonna have to come out of one-on-one. If you do it the way it is now, it'll come out of the ambulance fund. So y'all decide where you want the taxpayers to pay for it, or the ambulance fund to pay for it.
It is, what he just said changed my mind.
Well, I really think that there's still too much.
Mr. Chairman.
You have several times, my understanding, my reading of the Budget Finance Committee is standing for what they design to do is make recommendations, studies. Their recommendations are postponed. As far as what I've seen, it's still on the agenda for Monday night's meeting. Now, if somebody wants to alter that off the agenda, I say can. Obviously, it's some workshops, you can't make those motions there. If it's on and nobody takes it off, and someone makes a motion for or against it, however they want to do that, they're doing it against the recommendation of the committee. Because again, that committee only makes the advisory rulings and makes recommendations. And the committee, the members of the Budget Finance Committee have made that very plainly clear that that was what their will is, the majority. So that's kind of where you are with it right now.
So what we need is a motion that night from someone to remove it from the agenda.
When you go through the agenda, if someone wants to move to take it off the agendas, and that motion needs to be made that night. Don't get that motion, it's not approved. If it fails, and you've got that on the agenda at that point, you know, it is what it is. The decision made, if it's for it, then it's against the recommendation of at least the Budget Finance Committee and in favor of the Emergency Services Committee. This is the way I'm reading it.
And that's why I had initially said I wanted to leave it on the agenda, because it was on the agenda and it was recommended by one committee. It doesn't, you know, I'm sorry, budget or finance is gonna trump the other one. If you don't, I mean, they can vote, you can vote to build a new court. Just be prepared to make a motion that night to take it off the agenda if you want it off, and if you don't, then we'll vote on it. You vote it up, you vote it down. That was my point. Go either way with it. We vote it down, then we'll take it back to the appropriate committee to look at further on. Mr. Mullins.
It's been through my committee twice. We voted for it twice. It seems here that we have 3 or 4 people. I hope I ain't gonna step on your toes any, but it feels like y'all are trying to micromanage this man's department, micromanage this department, and tell him how to run his department. That's the way I feel about it. Now, y'all all can think about that between now and Monday.
And I would like to say that's a slippery slope that we don't want to, we shouldn't be doing that. Should we be doing that?
Well, I mean, it's called my attention that there's an ordinance and it's got some fairly vague language in it, but it speaks to that point about the commission's role in day-to-day operations of your department heads. Just my experience in legislative bodies, there's a certain amount of trust that you have with department heads. Let's just use the sheriff for a check. Sheriff's over the responsible for law enforcement. And with these elected officials, you've got statutory duties. There are some things that the county commission's gonna have to look at. Do you manage your department in an area? Here we've got, a different department. It's not an elected position, but it's one that's recommendations made, and this person's hired based on qualifications, trust, whatever qualifications professional services committee's gonna recommend. If you get into the day-to-day operations, and I think Mr. Noller said micromanaging, I think you run into a foul of that one ordinance that's already been passed. And of course, they didn't bring that in tonight, but it's something to think about. So, just throwing it out there.
Mr. Watt.
On Mr. Noller's, I'll take exception to that, to the point that our job as oversight committees is to make sure our department heads are spending the money wisely. If not for that, why have these committees? Why have these oversight? Whether it be emergency services, education oversight, prison oversight, we're spinning our wheels. That's what our job as an oversight committee is to do, is to say, yes or no, department head, we don't want you spending that money. So I take exception that there's 3 or 4, I'm one of them, I'll admit it. I'm on record saying it. That we need to look at the money we're spending and what we're spending it for. My second point to that, as far as long as I've been on Budget and Finance Committee, precedence has already been set. When the committee votes no on anything, it has never gone before the full commission before. We take it off the agenda. And now you're changing precedent on this one issue? That's not the way that's not what precedent's already been set. When it's voted down, it goes away, somebody's gotta bring a motion back up in a committee to bring it back up. Then, wait a minute, time out. Then I want somebody to tell me specifically what ordinance, what resolution, what expenditure that we've ever done that's been voted down by the Budget and Finance that's been still brought to the full committee. As long as I've been on the committee, it's never happened. It goes away. It gets brought up another way or another day. And I'm sure there's a way, I don't know, I have to give it to the mayor, of taking from the general fund and going back to the ambulance fund and transferring money. So I don't know for sure if Mr. Ford's comment that you want the taxpayers to spend it or the ambulance fund is a true comment. That's why this needs to go back and be relooked at again. And as Emergency Service Committee member, and Ms. Noller is chairman, we can do an emergency, he can call an emergency meeting, and we can get to the bottom of this and still have this come up, based on what the opinions that were said during the Budget and Finance Committee.
Ms. Pluckman.
Just want to point out, not that I care one way or the other, but just to point out, Planning Commission regularly doesn't recommend passage of zone changes, but they come before the full commission. Many of them actually pass, even though they weren't recommended. I recall a building committee just recently said, we don't want to rent space to an agency, yet it went before the full commission and passed. So there is a precedence that committees make recommendations, but that does not stop them from going in front of the commission.
Back 3 years, maybe 4 years ago, Mr. Bird came before us and wanted a truck for his use. We put stipulations on it, how it would be used, how it would be decals, what's the difference? It came before the commission, we put it that it would be white, it would have the county logo on it, be parked at the administration office at night, he wouldn't run it home like he did the one before. So if we can do it for that one, why can't we do it for this one? What's the difference?
I can't answer that right now. Mr. Burke.
I'm one of those guilty parties too, so I'll fess up to it. My intention is not to micromanage. My intention is the other day, and I want to be clear on this, was to find out if we could get a larger unit truck, because we were informed in that committee meeting that we could not. And when I found out that that wasn't necessarily accurate information, I felt the obligation to present it to the people that are on this commission. And then when I found out other information that needed to be explained or talked about, I think every commission needs to be as well informed as possible to make the decisions that they make. I felt it was my obligation to talk about these things. I didn't go in there trying to find out all these different packages, but when we find out information, sometimes you find more information, it changes your mind on things. But I prefaced this in the earlier meeting. I think we need to do something with the need for the rescue department. I don't think there's any argument. I think we need to do this quick as we can. I think there's ways we can work around the issues that we have before us, but I think it's the more information we have gathered, and some of this was mine, I wasn't going to just sit on it. I think it's my obligation to tell everybody what I found out. And the information I found out was coming from a governing body that handles things in the entire state. So I don't mean for this to kind of block anything, but I do think we have the obligation to research this as much as possible, to find out the things that we find out, and to make a well-informed decision, because whether, and I have to agree with some commission I talked to, whether the ambulance service generated that money on their own because they're one of the few departments that does generate funds, or whether it comes from the taxpayers' dollars. At some point, that ambulance service may need taxpayer money, well, what if it was there to begin with? So at the end of the day, they are segmented in different departments, but at the end of the day, it all becomes our responsibility because it's all taxpayer-affected funds. Whether you took it from the taxpayer originally, or whether you gave it unilaterally in a different way because the department needed it. I think we can work through some of these things that we talked about tonight. I think we're close to getting something. It's just a matter of where does it come from and what is it going to be like. That was really my true intention. Now, I think we should focus on helping them out, but at the same time, the things that I have been informed of today, I feel my obligation to let everybody know where we're I mean, they make their own decisions. The terminology that I used was terminology that was given to me. I didn't think it up. Anybody go down there to Wilson County Motors tomorrow if you want to. There's people that work in that department. That's all they do. And so I was trying to gather the information that was necessary for us to discuss to make sure that we make the right decision and do some investigation.
Ultimately, it's gonna be your decision Monday night, whether to leave this on the agenda as a budget amendment, as it is written, or to pull it off. And we will deal with that when we, are there any changes to the agenda? And we will vote on it at that time. If it passes to pull it off the agenda, we'll pull it off the agenda. Okay, if not, then we'll vote on it. You can vote it up, you can vote it down. But all this is appropriating their $38,000 to buy a vehicle. Mr. Walsh.
Just a rule of order. So since the Budget Finance Committee had a motion to postpone it, and it was approved to postpone it, we're still gonna send it on anyway.
That's my understanding of what you said that we should do.
I mean, the recommendation from the Budget Finance Committee was to postpone it. That's what their recommendation was. And that's a recommendation to the full commission. That was what I heard earlier. And so at that point, they can, the full commission can follow that recommendation or not follow that recommendation. Because the committee is making that advisory based on your findings, based on the discussions that took place in that meeting to the full commission. That's what the responsibility of that committee is. And so they're sending that up. This is what we want to do. Full commission does not have to follow that recommendation if they don't want to. There's a couple of alternatives you have here. It's an agenda item. You can take it off the agenda. Somebody can make that motion, take it off the agenda. If it passes, it fails. If it fails, it's still on the agenda. You go through because you represent your agenda. At that point, you can go through, and once you get to that item, you're back to the same discussions you had at the chair's going to say, well, we've got two recommendations here. One, we've got a recommendation that's coming out of the Emergency Services Committee, and it's for X. And then we've got a recommendation from the Budget Finance Committee, to postpone the decision on whether or not to take the EMS director's vehicle, to fund that out of the emergency service fund. And that was the recommendation, so whatever the will of the commission is at that point, somebody has to make a motion.
Mayor, didn't you say earlier if we did through the emergency services fund, it'd come out of 101?
If the question was, if you go buy the vehicle for the rescue squad,
Right.
what fund does it come out of? The rescue squad is under the 101 fund, so it would have to come out of that.
That's what I thought. Just wanted to be sure we had that clear.
There's no way to transfer that money back over or to.
If I was an auditor and I came in, I want to know why you took 118 funds and moved it over for rescue squad vehicles that's in the 101. And it's going to be a fine because I want to know why'd you do that.
That's what I'm asking. Just to clarify that part, not saying it can't be
Well,
done,
that's
but
why-
is there a mechanism
Well,
to do
that's
that?
why he was saying he wanted to use the 118 because he could then transfer, buy it out of the 118, transfer the vehicle down so it goes over to the rescue squad. And then he was wanting to use grant money to try to replace one of the other vehicles, the 1986 truck.
Right.
So he's trying to find a way to get two vehicles with one. If it goes over to 101, for whatever reason, because he uses it out of the 101 for that vehicle, for some reason that messes up the grant.
But he can still come back with another vehicle from the 118 fund and get the vehicle that way, correct?
He could, but then you pay for both of them instead of using the
Well,
grant.
my point of that is not saying that if we get him a vehicle now, it's gotta come out of the 101 fund. There's still a mechanism that he can use the 118 fund money to get the vehicle that is approved.
If you're saying replace his current vehicle, yes, as a
Yes.
separate issue, but the question I was asked is if
Right.
you buy a rescue squad vehicle, which one's to come out of it?
That's why I wanted to clarify what the actual question was and what your actual answer
But if you're
pertained to.
asking, if you're talking about purchasing two different vehicles, yeah, you can buy one in the 101 and one out of the 118. It'd be two different vehicles.
I just wanted to be clear, if he buys whatever vehicle later on, it's not, it can still come out of the 118 fund and not the 101.
If it's going to be for the emergency services
Correct.
and not for the rescue squad.
What would be the difference besides taking down school for them? That ain't gonna happen. Be the same difference.
Okay.
We, like I say, deal with it two ways. When we do the agenda, you can vote to take it off, we can leave it on there and we'll vote on it, one way or the other. And I will make it very clear that it has been recommended by one and not recommended by the other. And so that in case there's any commissioners who are not here tonight, we will note that.
Mr. Chairman, would you recommend the third recommendation that came out of the third committee as to some of the particulars of it? Steering committee make a recommendation too. So there were three committees that actually had a voice
Yes.
on that topic.
We were looking at that, actually in the minutes of that tonight, and it wouldn't be, either one of these would take care of what was there. And that was that the issue of funding the truck be dealt with by budget finance, and the issue of badging and what truck and what color and all this stuff go back and be put into the personnel policy so that there's an actual policy of what those, that's my recollection of that meeting. Is that what the minutes reflect? And is that was, okay. So, yes. This is not contrary to what was done.
Just to be clear, what you're saying is that if he buys a truck with the 118, then he can get that truck and then get the other truck with the grant. Possible.
Possibly.
If he buys the truck with the 101, then, and he wanted to get the other truck, then he would have to buy those trucks.
That's how it's explained. The grant, I think, is actually an emergency services type grant, and it goes for the vehicle. And so I think it's more tied to that 2004 vehicle, or then, excuse me, the 1986 truck, since it's military surplus and has issues, that they would probably use that one as a basis for the grant. And so if you transfer it over, buy a vehicle on the rescue squad side, then why did you buy this vehicle and now come to us for a grant? And that's kind of how it's explained to me. But as I said, the question I was asked is if you buy a rescue squad vehicle, which funds it come out of? Well, rescue squad is under 101, so it come out of 101.
So he's trying to get two trucks and only.
Yeah, I'm probably inarticulately explaining it to you, so I would make sure he's there. If he'd be available at the county commission meeting, if it does stay on the agenda, if it comes off, then it doesn't matter, it's going somewhere else anyway.
Thank
We have several interfund transfers. Go through these. All of these were recommended by Budget and Finance to be approved. First one is 2020-101-06, it's tobacco grant reserve fund. It's moving money from the reserve funds to purchase some smoking cessation or anti-smoking benches to go around the county, I guess you'd say. Those funds are restricted to that type of use, can't be used for anything else. 2020-101-07 is economic development, staff development. We had some members of the economic development team to attend the governor's conference on economic development, and this would be to basically approve the funds to reimburse them on their cost registrations and things of that nature. Rescue other equipment, this was where they sold an old rescue vehicle, and they're wanting to use that money to go into equipment, to purchase other rescue equipment. 111 Urban Services Fund is a streetscape grant. The budget only reflected our 20% match, not the total cost. Since this is a reimbursement grant, we have to basically pay the bills, turn them into the state, and they will send us the money. So this is a time lag, but we have to pay for it in order to get it back. And then the 141 General Purpose School Fund, there's one trust grant, UT trust grant, and where they received that grant, they want to use it for the books and bike budget bus program student incentives on each campus. So it's basically the grant money that they receive, putting it into the category that they want to spend it on. So, like I say, all of those were recommended by Budget and Finance. Anybody have any questions about any of those? Notaries, we have 4 currently. Carl Matthew Carman, Marshall E. White Jr., Rachel Steele, Sheila Everett. And I don't know of any other business, and I guess we'll adjourn until Monday night. Have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Johnson? All in favor, help up and leave.